On this Thursday night, the concern of Omicron spreading in schools. About half the country's kids will be back in class next week, while the others get an extended break.
Our kids need to be able to go to school,
leaving some parents scrambling again. The hit to healthcare. How provinces plan to react as more and more frontline staff test positive across the country. Omicron surging in Western Europe. In France, more than 2 people are infected every second, while Russia's pandemic death toll climbs. And a dog's life.
I can't believe someone didn't love him enough to keep him.
2 fat Fidos in Edmonton get the gift of health.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Colleen Christie.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with the record-breaking impact of COVID-19. For the first time since the pandemic began, the number of daily new cases worldwide has surpassed 1 million. In Canada, skyrocketing case counts reached new highs in several provinces today, driven by the highly transmissible Omicron variant. The dangerous surge comes as many students prepare to head back to class next week. Several provinces are extending winter breaks, while others scramble to finalize plans. As Heather Yourex-West reports, it's all having a major effect on parents right across the country.
With a new baby and an 8-year-old itching to get back to school, Calgary mom Lauren Fairweather is anxious to know whether kids in Alberta will be heading back to class next week as planned.
It's really heartbreaking every time we get told we're going back to online or don't get to be in school with our friends. And it's tiring.
The Alberta government has not yet announced its plans for students next week, though most other provinces are opting to keep kids home, even if it's just for a couple more days.
Students will be returning to school in-person learning on Wednesday, January 5th, 2022. This will provide our schools with extra time to begin to put in place additional health and safety measures, including deploying additional masking options for students and educators and further improving air ventilation in schools.
Unions like the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario have been advocating for improved masks, including the distribution of N95s for teachers.
At the same time, there is a very strong desire on the part of members to be where we belong, which is in schools, teaching our students.
Students will be returning to in-person learning across most of the country, but in several regions they'll have to wait an extra week.
We're not closing schools. We're not going to online learning. What we're doing is having a phased approach to full back to school.
The winter break has now been extended in BC, Manitoba, Quebec, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and the Northwest Territories, while students in Newfoundland and Labrador are set to move to online learning next week.
I think as long as it's a short delay, the goal of which would be to make the school environment safer, then that's a prudent step. But we need to get the kids back to school as soon as we can.
I think that at the very bare minimum, our kids need to be able to go to school.
After nearly 2 years of COVID uncertainty, parents, students, and teachers forced to navigate yet another wave. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
Ontario is also updating its testing guidelines and shortening the isolation period for some residents. People with COVID-19 who are fully vaccinated and children under 12 will now be required to isolate for 5 days, provided their symptoms have improved. And starting tomorrow, PCR tests will only be available for symptomatic, high-risk individuals and those who work in the highest risk settings. The province will also offer 4th doses of mRNA vaccines to seniors in congregate care settings who had their 3rd shot at least 3 months prior. Ontario is just one of the provinces loosening isolation periods for those who test positive to help prevent the system from collapsing. The Public Health Agency of Canada is reporting a 141% increase in new cases over the last week. Hospitalizations from the Omicron variant are relatively low, but COVID-19 infections and precautions are forcing many people off the job, including in healthcare. Ross Lord reports.
With COVID-19 cases overwhelming Ontario's testing capacity, more people are turning to emergency departments, like this one in Oakville.
A lot of people coming in because they can't access the resources, but in addition, our numbers are going up. People are feeling a little bit disheartened by it. And I think it's overexhausting a lot of the systems.
But rules forcing healthcare workers to isolate if they've tested positive or been exposed to the virus are leaving fewer staff to respond.
We are noticing that it is depleting some of our staff in that capacity.
In Manitoba, 418 healthcare workers tested positive in 1 week. That's about 7 times more than the previous week. To prevent a collapse of the healthcare system, provinces are starting to loosen the rules. In Quebec, where 12,000 healthcare workers are at home, some who've tested positive will be allowed to stay on the job. Now, other provinces are reducing isolation periods.
We are also going to reduce the self-isolation period following a positive test, whether it's a PCR test or a rapid test, from 10 days down to 5 days.
To ensure sufficient staffing levels, workers have the opportunity to return to work after isolating for 7 days based on a negative PCR test on day 6 or 2 negative RAT tests at day 6 and 7.
American authorities reduced isolation periods this week, but the Public Health Agency of Canada says for now it's not changing its recommendation. And some in the healthcare system say any move that could increase contact between the contagious and the vulnerable should not be taken lightly.
I struggle to see where that's a good idea. And that would also mean someone showing up to work at Sobeys sick, someone that doesn't have a union to speak for them. I think that if you're sick, you should be able to stay home.
What's to stop us from just basically opening everything up and saying, hey, we don't need to isolate? Like, where do we draw the line here?
With pandemic conditions continually changing, finding the best response is still elusive. Ross Lord, Global News.
Nova Scotia is also expanding eligibility for booster shots. Starting Monday, people aged 30 and older can start booking their third shots. The province is also adding more clinics to deliver vaccinations and is appealing to anyone with experience giving shots to help. Nova Scotia is also recommending people use 3-layer masks, whether non-medical or cloth. In Quebec, a nighttime curfew will be in effect starting tomorrow. The curfew will run from 10 p.m. until 5 a.m. for at least the next 3 weeks. Fines starting at $1,000 will be in place for anyone not at home without a good reason during that time, and people must work from home if they can. Shops will be closed on Sundays, and indoor dining at restaurants and gatherings in homes will not be allowed. With pediatric hospitalizations skyrocketing in the U.S., the FDA is expected to announce approval of Pfizer's booster shot for 12 to 15-year-olds on Monday. And while a quieter countdown to 2022 has begun, time is standing still for thousands of travelers stuck at U.S. airports, including those flying WestJet. Jennifer Johnson reports.
Across America, there is little cheer as city officials put the brakes on New Year's Eve celebrations. Atlanta's annual peach drop has been dropped as the Omicron variant tears through that region.
It's the best interest of the city to keep everyone safe as possible.
Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, and Kansas City are among a growing list of places telling revelers to stay home.
I know that people are anxious to get back to a sense of normal. But we have to remember that we are still in the middle of a global pandemic. COVID is not over.
The crystal ball drop in New York City will go on, but with 1/4 of the crowd. Everyone has to wear masks and show proof of vaccination. As 2021 comes to a close, the Centers for Disease Control is reporting its highest level of new daily COVID-19 cases ever.
With Omicron, we are going to see a viral blizzard over the next 5 to 8 weeks in this country.
Real blizzards in several western states and COVID-19 attacking airline workers are making for the perfect storm, grounding planes and passengers. Thousands have been stranded at airports, while bad weather is again in the forecast. 20 million Americans are under severe weather alerts.
Not being with my parents for New Year's Eve. Don't make me cry.
WestJet, Delta, United, JetBlue, Alaska Airlines, and others are canceling flights and trimming routes.
I just want to get home.
Unfortunately, travel experts say that simple request may be hard to deliver for the next several days.
We can expect this to continue through the holiday season, through the new year, and it probably will not let up until the actual travel rush lets up.
Going home is also getting difficult for thousands of passengers aboard cruise ships. The Queen Mary II has delayed its return to the Port of New York after a COVID-19 outbreak. That ship is among almost 90 the CDC is now monitoring. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
Just like North America, countries across Europe are breaking records for daily COVID cases. France confirmed more than 200,000 new infections today for a second day in a row. It's now introducing some controversial new measures to stop the rapid spread of the Omicron variant. And when it comes to deaths, Russia has now overtaken Brazil, second only to the U.S. Redmond Shannon reports on the dire situation.
Peeking out from its scaffolding, Big Ben is preparing for 2022 while undergoing renovation. But London, like most of Europe, will not be ringing in the new year as normal. The UK, France and Spain alone posting almost 500,000 new COVID-19 cases in a day. The real numbers thought to be much higher as testing measures struggle to keep up.
We do recognise that there are some difficulties across the country, both with pharmacies and with home testing requests.
In Italy, test centres are also overloaded. This woman says she spent 5 hours in line. In France, where more than 2 people are being infected every second, lineups too for vaccines. This doctor says the current wave is spurring the previously vaccine hesitant to come for their first shot. French movie theatres serve their last scoops of popcorn before eating and drinking in cinemas is banned. And Paris is controversially making masks mandatory outdoors starting Friday. This woman among those who think it's a pointless move. In Central and Eastern Europe, however, many infection curves are tilting down. But authorities in countries like Germany and Russia warn Omicron's spread is only beginning. Despite Russian case numbers being low, deaths have hovered around 1,000 a day. Its official pandemic death toll now overtaking Brazil. And in Poland, which, like Russia, has high rates of vaccine hesitancy, the effects of last month's spike now apparent. It has reported more than 700 deaths for the second day running. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Caught up in a crackdown on dissent. Coming up, why 2 journalists are facing charges in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, 2 former editors of an online pro-democracy news outlet have been charged with sedition and denied bail. The charges come a day after the shutdown of Stand News and the arrest of some of its staff, including Canadian singer and activist Denise Ho. She was released from police custody today. Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam defended the raid, part of a wider crackdown on dissent in the semi-autonomous city.
Seditious acts and activities and inciting other people through public acts and activities could not be condoned under the guise of news reporting.
Stand was the most prominent remaining pro-democracy publication in Hong Kong. Ahead, the difficult first year of Joe Biden's presidency and the trouble that looms.
You're watching Global National.
Governor General Mary Simon is looking ahead to 2022 with optimism for Canadians. In her first New Year's message since becoming vice-regal in July, Simon says Canadians have shown resilience despite a difficult year.
In Inuktitut, there is a concept called ayunnata. Although it means commitment, a promise, a vow, it's also so much more. We find meaning in its action.
Simon delivered her New Year's message in English, French, and Inuktitut. The surge in COVID-19 cases in the United States has in many ways defined the first year of Joe Biden's presidency. The virus has derailed his central promise to bring the pandemic under control. While Biden's approval ratings have already plummeted, things could get worse for the Democratic Party as midterm elections loom. Jackson Prosco reports.
On the steps of the very building that had come under attack just 2 weeks prior,
I, Joseph Robinette Biden.
Joe Biden was sworn in as the 46th president of the United States, delivering a promise to restore faith in government.
This is Democracy's Day. A day of history and hope.
Yet Biden's first year has instead been overshadowed by setbacks, political strife, and the unrelenting crush of the pandemic.
A lot of unfortunate things have happened in his first year, many of which he had no real control over.
I'll shut down the virus.
Bringing COVID-19 under control was a central campaign promise for Biden. Hallelujah. The day he took office, the U.S. death toll from the pandemic stood at 500,000. Vaccines delivered optimism it would all end soon. Biden even declared July 4th Independence Day from the virus.
We are emerging from the darkness of years, a year of pandemic and isolation, a year of pain, fear, and heartbreaking loss.
The Delta and Omicron variants had other plans. So did Biden's Republican opponents.
They've sent a message to say, you know what, get vaccinated, but it really ain't going to do anything for you.
Protect us, don't inject us.
They sowed discord over vaccines and vaccination mandates. Suddenly, the country that oversaw the development of vaccines was left lagging behind the world in vaccination rates, while deaths soared past 800,000.
All of the disinformation and misinformation has become very problematic. People don't know who to trust, who to turn to, and we're going to have to do a lot of work to repair that in the future.
The Biden administration had its own missteps on pandemic messaging, promising booster shots for everyone before regulators had approved them. Just 53% of Americans now approve of his response to the pandemic, down 20 points from the start of the year.
We're navigating a completely new virus with changing epidemiology, changing virology, and a changing political landscape is extremely complicated.
On the political front, Biden's domestic agenda has been sidelined by the realities of a slim majority in Congress. His $4 trillion infrastructure and social spending package has been derailed. Key issues like voting rights legislation have stalled, as moderate Democrats refuse to back the Biden agenda. God bless the USA. While Republican hardliners, loyalists to former President Donald Trump, continue to push lies about a stolen election, undermining Biden's legitimacy.
The biggest factor that has really made governing difficult for Biden has been the thing that he promised to bring, which was unity.
The chaotic and sudden U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan only furthered perceptions of an administration in free fall, even though Biden was adhering to a departure plan set by Trump. Biden has paid dearly in the polls. His overall approval rating has sunk from a high of 57% in January to 42% today.
There are just so many things that have made Biden less popular because Americans thought they were voting for competence and normality and solutions.
Yet if there's one overarching issue dragging Biden down, it's the economy and rising consumer prices.
The number one issue was the economy and inflation. And it really comes down to making people's lives better.
Inflation is at its highest level since 1990. The supply chain crunch has only added to his woes. And Biden's agenda hasn't yet delivered relief to millions of middle-class voters, despite record-setting job creation.
Look at my presidency so far. It's a jobs presidency, and it's a small business presidency.
It all suggests trouble ahead for the president and his party. Democrats are eyeing substantial losses in the 2022 midterms, when Republicans are likely to regain control of the House and possibly the Senate. Republicans are likely to use any newfound majority to launch congressional investigations and stoke the culture wars. Yet Biden also has a chance to turn things around. The next year will prove crucial for salvaging his presidency and his legacy, even if the lessons from his first year suggest it may be largely decided by factors beyond his control. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
Up next, a dog's new life. How an Edmonton woman is teaching old dogs new tricks. Dogs bring joy to the lives of so many of us. They even make our daily routines a little healthier, often forcing us to get outdoors. But an Edmonton woman has flipped the script. She's given not one, but two abandoned and overweight dogs a new home and helped them get back to a healthy weight. Sarah Comedina explains.
Woody knows he's a good-looking old dog.
Are you more handsome? Yeah.
He's a massive Malamute, but not like before. This big boy has dropped a whopping 100 pounds.
Almost 210. Yeah, they actually weighed him on a cattle scale when they got him in Lethbridge.
June 2020, Woody was found abandoned in a muddy creek in Coaldale. He appeared to be drowning.
You know, Woody was 11 when we got him, and I can't imagine after 11 years being going, okay, I'm done now.
The rescue turned to Pam Hagee, an Edmonton woman who helped another big old boy.
Over 200 pounds between them. It's about 205 pounds that they've lost. Where you go?
Here's Kai.
Attaboy.
In 2018, his owners left him at a clinic to be put down. He weighed 173 pounds. He could barely stand. Hagee changed his life.
I can't believe someone didn't love him enough to keep him.
Kai is bonded with Hagee. He loves going to the dog park and long walks. He also has a job.
Are you excited to be a therapy dog? You ready to go?
You kind of stick with them through thick and thin, and these guys literally through thick and thin.
As for Woody, it was believed he would be great on an acreage, but it didn't work out.
He doesn't listen. He does whatever he wants. And I remember thinking, who has a Malamute in the city? Like, literally, who has a Malamute in the city? But I do.
Hagee was only supposed to foster these two, but Kai fit in so well.
Are you hungry?
In November, it was clear Woody would also be added to the pack, even if sometimes he gets a little desperate for snacks.
I always thought of myself more as a puppy person, but boy, these two old boys really stole my heart.
These dogs spent years unable to really move. Now they have a safe and healthy place to live out their golden years. Sarah Comedina, Global News.
Gotta love old dogs. That's Global National for this Thursday night. I'm Colleen Christie. Tonight's Your Canada is Quincy, the dog on a snowy trail in Winnipeg. There are beautiful shots all over Canada. Please email yours to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Sonia Dio will be at the anchor desk tomorrow. Take care of yourselves and Happy New Year.